Pablo Escobar changed Colombia and the world as we know it. To this day, people remember all the things Pablo has done for his family and for himself. He killed over 2,800 officers and then over 1,400 innocent people for his own sake. He has been famous, but for the wrong reasons. He was the richest drug lord at the time. He had a lot of targets wanting him dead. Overall, Pablo was a hoarded man that changed the world and how we know it today. Before Pablo's reign on Colombia, marijuana was the top drug that was getting carried around the world. There was a lot of kidnapping, death, and murders in Colombia at the time. By 1974, M19, the mostly urban guerrilla communist group in Colombia, had a lot of problems done to Colombia, like election frauds and also drug trafficking. Also, the Medellin cartel was the most important cartel. Carlos Linda was a smuggler that had convinced them that he can get the drugs across to America. And this is when Pablo was starting to become a drug lord of Colombia. As time passed, the Ocho brothers were turned in and Rodriguez Gacha were gunned down.
Stop it.
Pablo Escobar started by selling illegal cigarettes and by 22 years old had his first million. As we know, Colombia had been having a major marijuana problem before the age of cocaine. After the murder of Fabio Restrepo, a local drug trafficker of marijuana, after the death of this man, Pablo now became a local celebrity and took this man's place. Pablo now owned all this man's operations and all of his drugs. After buying large sums of cocoa paste and creating shipping routes, Pablo teamed up with other infamous drug lords, 1,000 police officers, and 200 judges. Pablo was now getting unstoppable, but this was not enough for him. He needed more.
Pablo Escobar was quickly taking over Colombia with his drugs. By the year 1989, he was the 7th richest man in the world. He had so much money he couldn't even count it all. He was on the cover of magazines making around $22 billion a year. He controlled more than 80% of the cocaine in the world and exported over 15 tons a day. Once his daughter was cold and his bodyguards couldn't find any firewood. So what was the solution? How about burning $2 million to make a fire? But how did he do it? Because of the crappy salaries and conditions the cops were getting, Pablo made it simple to own them. He owned most of the cops in Colombia with good bribes and payrolls. Starting off, he would hide the cocaine in his hired cars just to smuggle it past the cops. But the richer he got, the easier it was for him to succeed. Eventually, he got more money to cops, and he didn't even have to. If they didn't accept, they died. According to the Wall Street Journal, Pablo had planes running from Colombia to Florida to New York, packed with tons of cocaine, trucks running all over South and Central America, and boats going all the way out to Europe. Pablo also only didn't care about himself, he was oddly a family man. His wife's name was Maria Victoria Henao. Despite what some people might say, she loved Pablo and stood strong with him throughout everything. Being born very poor, she married Pablo at a very young age. They had 2 kids together. Being in the drug business, Pablo had many encounters that would be considered affairs with Maria. In 1993, she fled the country and was rumored that she was gunned down by the police, but she actually fled to Argentina and is still alive today. Pablo and Maria had 2 children together over their 18 years relationship. They had a son named Juan Pablo. Juan was very spoiled. His father gave him go-karts, a pool, a zoo, and servants to take care of his every need. Once Pablo and his kids went to Disney World in America, along with Washington, D.C. Marlua was the other child in Escobar's family. She was born on May 25th, 1984, and was the baby of the family. Just like her brother, she was very spoiled. She once asked for a unicorn, so Pablo made a custom horse that looked like a unicorn. Just like the rest of the family though, she fled. Otherwise, we have no idea what happened to Manuel. She went off the grid.
Pablo Escobar was one of the richest men in the world, but he was greedy and didn't know when to just leave it alone. Pablo loved soccer a lot and did a lot for his team club, Atlético Nacional S.A. He loved his team so much that he would do anything to help them, even if it was illegal. This wasn't enough though. He bought a herd of hippos, a giraffe, an elephant, and more exotic and illegal animals. The hippos are still alive today and are actually considered problems by the locals. A whole zoo full of exotic animals and basically owning the outcome of sports, this wasn't enough for Pablo though. He wanted to become president. He became a registered member of the Colombian Liberal Party. This is known as Pablo's biggest mistake. He was actually doing very good in the polls due to the people's support. He got the people's support by building poor people's homes, which people still live in today. Pablo got really close to winning, but the Liberal Party exposed him and forced him out to lose the seat. Now that Pablo's name and face was out there, he had to be careful. After many skirmishes between Pablo and the DEA, he managed to build a jail called La Catedral. This was designed by Pablo himself. The people in the DEA would be happy and Pablo would leave everyone alone. It was a win-win situation for everyone, or was it?
The Los Pepes were the other major drug group at the time. They were in competition with Pablo's cartel, so they had no problem stepping in to help the DEA. Fidel Castino, the drug lord at the Los Pepes cartel. The head dealer had been mad back at Pablo when he was at La Carrera because Pablo had killed two of his best men, Fernando Garcino and Gerardo Macana. After these two murders, the Los Pepes turned full-on psycho on Pablo. The name Los Pepes also is known as Bastillos por Pablo Escobar, which translates back to English as the people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. Although the DEA was recorded to have despised the Los Pepes, they still desperately sided with them, hoping to end this madness. Oh, and did they make one big mistake?
The DEA finally heard about Pablo's problems in Colombia and the community because when they got to him, he had surrendered, but said he was only going to go to his own prison, La Catedral, with his own bodyguards. On Pablo's birthday, Pablo killed two of his men because the two men cheated him out, and that's when the authorities were told about. So the next day, Pablo was on the run because he was going to be sent to a government prison where he had to stay there for life. And Pablo was on the run from the authorities, but since Pablo had all his money dug underground in the safe houses, so he could not access it because he still had a target on him until he died or is caught.
The death of Pablo Escobar had started when Pablo Escobar had escaped from the prison called La Carrera. 16 months later, on December 2nd, 1993, after Pablo Escobar's birthday, he was shot and killed by the Colombian police force along with DA's two members, Javier Peña and Steve Murphy. As the growth of Pablo's problems, he had killed many people while in his own prison selling his drugs. When the authorities were told of his crimes, he would always be on the run with Los Pepes against him.
That's it. Good job.
After Pablo was killed, the crime was decreasing in Colombia, and after they captured Gilberto and Miguel Rodriguez Ordila, the Colombia's drug cartel was finally over, and Colombia was finally becoming a much safer country for family and relatives to live there without all the death tolls and crime. Some of the members of the Los Pepes became inspectors for drug trafficking. Cocaine soon started to be stopped from getting shipped to other countries. The U.S. started to put borders for gangs passing to America and then borders on water transportation. More people had to live in Colombia from the 80s to the 2000s. The population grew from 27 million to 50 million, so Colombia became more some for families.
Good.
Pablo is remembered as the Colombian drug lord known to this day. Pablo has become the largest growing drug lord in Colombian history. As we conclude this documentary, we must remember that all the deaths Pablo has caused to many people's lives. As the life of Pablo changed dramatically from a slump in the streets, just selling marijuana, to a drug lord stacking up money to become one of the richest men in the world. Pablo is one of the top drug lords to this day. The only one who beat him was El Chapo, becoming the richest drug lord before being captured in a shootout on December 2nd, 1993. Pablo has made a scar in the drug industry, a scar in crime, a scar in Colombia, and a scar in the future.